Respected elders and my dear friends, good afternoon. Ayurveda pharmaceutics and its relevance in present healthcare. Why I am talking this way is simple. Let us come back to the ground reality. We all know Ayurveda is having a history of more than 5,000 years. There are more than 100 active colleges across the country who are almost every year hundreds of students are coming out. But when we come back to the reality, what is the number of students taking up Ayurveda as a mainstream profession for their livelihood is a big question mark. See, somewhere we have to be pragmatic within our community to look at where exactly we stand, why, and what is the course correction to be made, and what is our future. I strongly believe any science or philosophy which is having no relevance, which is having no practicality or utility, probably we should shun that. Because when you look at the students who enroll into the science and those who pass out, those who complete their PG, etc., there is a paradigm negative shift in their attitude. And how it has to be corrected? Is there any inherent flaw in the science? These are the issues fundamentally we have to look at. And this particular paper is primarily focused at addressing the students and postgraduates who are in the practice, and some of them may be in dilemma where they stand in the coming years once they come out of the institutes. Next one, please. See, coming back to the pharmaceutics, we know Aushadha is one of the important Chatushpadas, one of the Trisutras, and all the details we know, and our teachers and seniors already elaborated its role and clinical utility and all that. But is it only, as Dr. Ravi Shankar said, it's only a luck or a chance? No. A big no. Is it only some concocted version, or is it only some traditional? Unfortunately, the word tradition in an international dictum, it goes in a different way. Is it only a traditional science confined to a particular group, area, or a region, or a country? Or is it not applicable across the globe in any situation? And when you look at these fundamentals, we have to go back how it was practiced and where we stand today. Okay? I think the image is self-explanatory. Go to the next one, please. This almost like a cacophony, literary cacophony, where Ayurveda means herbs, jadi-bootis. You can see people on footpath with a label. You go to beach, you'll see Ayurveda massage. And unfortunately, many, if you take a census or if you make a survey, many people doesn't know what Ayurveda is and what benefits they can derive out of this science. Next one, please. Coming back to the reality, as the earlier papers very clearly mentioned, the meticulousness behind the creation of this science and this concept and its philosophy dates back to a few centuries. And even today, those principles are very relevant, very much applicable, and it holds good even in future for a simple reason. These are all evolved out of meticulous observation of the nature, the symptomatology, and beyond that, the yogic intuition of our sages. And then it evolved into a textual form. And with that background, if you look at the first primordial descriptions are available in Vedas, Later, the Bruhatrahis came into the picture. The entire concept of what Ayurveda, its philosophy, its principles, everything made into a dictum, and the original thesaurus of entire the formative principles, the approach, everything is available during the Samhitas. And this Bruhatrahis may even today holds the entire principles of Ayurveda. And coming back to our core subject now, the Bhaishajya Kalpana. Many of the information about the pharmaceutical knowledge was an integral part of a physician's total approach. But with due advance in many of the pathology or any of our clinical conditions, and also when the alchemy came into the picture in the 7th century, the pharmaceutical as a different entity evolved, and that's what we can see in Lagutrahis, where, for example, Sharangadhara very clearly elaborated, rather sublime the entire into knowledge into a different text, and from then onwards, the entire Bhaishajya Kalpana evolved along with different schools of thoughts like Rasashastra. Next one, please. And if you look at, as I said, Bruhatrahis are the fundamental principles, and whatever the evolution happened, whatever the incremental growth happened in due course, nobody deviated from the original principles or the fundamentals of the Ayurveda. And there very clearly it says a drug or a therapy that which alleviates a disease and aggravates another is not the right one. The ideal therapy alleviates a disease but never aggravates another. Probably this simple dictum holds good not only in the past, not only in the present, even in the future. And this is the essence why today the world is looking back at the Ayurveda and its role as a mainstream clinical science, mainstream medical science, not as an alternative system. Okay, next one, please. If you summarize the whole, the principles available, we can grossly classify the different class of drugs as an inhibitor, or maybe a group of stimulators, or maybe a promoter. This is how, whatever the terminologies are explained, and why I am stressing in this audience or this gathering is for a simple reason. Please understand, there is a dichotomy in our approach. On one hand, we are seeing almost a reductionist theory of clinical management, whereas Ayurveda takes the entire concept in a holistic way. And now the dilemma in the upcoming students or the practitioners who want to embrace the science, which route to take? What is their understanding and what is their role actually to be played? Next one, please. See, as I said, none of these principles created overnight. There is a very meticulous deliberation, intense scrutiny. That's the reason nobody came with something like additions of any of doshas or dhatus or siddhantas, whether it's Sarvatantra Siddhanta or Pratitantra Siddhanta. None of the things have got any deviation in due course because of the intense scrutiny. And with respect to the pharmaceutics, the central theme from the beginning is the safety. And independent, you can go to the next one, please. And the entire concept is basically patient-centric. Safety is an important phenomena, and one of the important tools around which the entire concept of drug development happened. Today, when we look at or when we assess the quality movement, what is happening in the Ayush industry, both at the clinical management through NABH or at the level of drug development through different GMP and other regulatory the applicabilities. When you look back at Charaka's definitions, almost the entire concept of drug and its development and its safety, etc., has given a primary focus on the safety, and then comes the efficacy. The unsung beauty of Ayurveda medicines. Please understand, the complex drug-body interactions which involves huge diversities and specificities right from ingestion of a drug. That's the reason there are 10 different time for drug intake, till complete elimination of its last residue encompassing pre to post digestive phases. Dwelling into the topic furnishes the original principles upon which the medicinal value, especially of the plant drugs, again particularly of the combinatorial therapy involving polyherbal formulations, were promulgated, derived and explained. Next one please. Now Bheshija is a complete intrinsic value of a natural substance in its natural form with all its molecular complexities is the cornerstone of Ayurvedic pharmaceutics. This why I am telling is, any drug development, drug discoveries, we always try to look at the isolates, look at the active principles, how it has to be segregated from the many of the residual components of the original source of the drug, and how it is put into practice in the clinical management is what a reductionist theory looks at. Whereas Ayurveda contradicts this at the fundamental level, and the entire concept of drug development is based on an holistic way, even at the level of the formulation. And generally, when we look at any polyherbal formulation, we tend to feel that there may not be any rationality behind the drug development. That is probably because of a lack of awareness or understanding or interpretation. And a complex phytoconstituents in their pristine state and never their isolates responsible for the biological activity according to Ayurveda. That's why you can come across many theories or many papers contradicting the role of many antiviral drugs or many antipyretic drugs. Phyllanthus neuridae an example, Tinospora cardifolia for antipyretic activities an example, and many such innumerable examples are available in our day-to-day MD and PhD thesis. And this is a fundamental reason, because the entire concept of the drug delivery and the drug absorption, etc., based on a different principle. Next one, please. The unsung beauty of Ayurvedic medicines is basically multiple effects at different sites by a single action at one or multiple sites. So when you look at this definition, it looks like it is something carried from a modern pharmaceutical text. In reality, let us go with an example. We know Glycyrrhiza glabra or Yashtimadu. If you look at the description given for this individual herb in Bhava Prakasha, right from its antitussive activity, the same drug, same form is administered as an anti-inflammatory. The same drug is having nootropic activity. The same drug is also one of the 4 important Rishyadravya, that aphrodisiac activity, and is also anti-ulcer in nature. Like this, many of the herbs which are described in the classics having multiple effect, and this multiple effect is the beauty. Probably there are different reasons for it, which I will explain later. And action at one site ramifies to control action at another site. And this is one of the reasons why many drugs in a polyherbal formulation, if you look at the individual active's role with respect to the site of activity and where exactly the final result, there will be variation, but that variation can be the reason for the simple way, the variation is simply that action of that particular drug at one place may be ramifying or positively affecting at another site. And these are all very important, not only at the level of formulation, please understand, even at the clinical application. And this is where probably the doctors, upcoming doctors, or the students terribly failing to understand and also assimilate into their practice. That's probably the reason why n number of research activities, good number of seminars, national and international and local seminars, discussions, PG, almost monthly and weekly get-togethers, again a brainstorming session, still not able to stimulate the students to come into the mainstream Ayurveda practice. Next one, please. And as I said before, a polyherbal formulation, if you generally think, without having this basic paradigm about different activities, the role of individual herbs, probably we feel that it is a cocktail of many herbs. In reality, if you segregate individually, taking many of the modern tools for understanding, we can classify those ingredients under different classes or different role, what they play in actual formulation, like an agonist, partial agonist, or a bioavailability enhancer, or maybe an antidote, and also a supporting drug. Due to lack of time, I may not be able to get into the one or two formulations and explain. Go to the next one, please. And we can summarize this role. Next one. No, the previous one. We can summarize this role. The subcellular structure with which the drug combines to initiate the action, and most drugs act by combining with some key substances in the biological system or milieu. This is what we, in modern principles, we call the receptors. Whether we understand or know the language or know the pathway of a drug or not is immaterial, but when you administer a drug, invariably based on this principle, depending on the site of action required, of the age of the patient or maybe the severity of the condition, the drug acts. That's the reason, though EST, a classical aphrodisiac drug as per the references what we have, but is also administered in a child for antitussive or expectorant activity. This is what the unsung beauty of Ayurvedic formulation. And when you look at the definitions of these agonist, partial agonist, these are all available in many of the pharmaceutical texts. It applies even to our main or maybe the supporting drugs in any formulation. Next one, please. And this is the one thing I want to highlight. When we explain what is the mode of activity and all that, generally, because we say it is also the yogic intuition which led to the formulations and new drug development. But actually, in reality, those observations and also the yogic knowledge basically evolved to such a superior level in the past. We can see with one classical reference available with respect to the pharmacokinetics in modern pharmaceutics. The drugs exhibit their action after reaching a specific substratum or target site. Only then becomes intent or abhipretya on adopting a specific stratagem of action to bring about specific result. The time, target site, the stratagem, and the final therapeutic result vary from drug to drug distinctly. In fact, what the material do in this or in those several pathways are controlled by above several factors in a drug action. In which manner is so done is the potency, or what we call the virya. And where this is done is the target site. When they do so is the time of action, and how they do so is the stratagem, and what they accomplish is the final result. If I remove the reference what is given there, probably people may think, especially from the contemporary science, that it is taken from modern pharmacokinetics or dynamics or maybe the therapeutics textbook and Copedia. But actually, this is the original reference available in our classics, especially the Charaka, with respect to the drug, where it goes, how it goes, what are the principles, and what means prabhava, and what does it mean achintya, and why it says so, and which are all the drugs, and what are those issues. In detail, it's available, but only thing is, since it's in a holistic way developed as a main text of entire, both from right from the health to the disease, the entire spectrum is taken in a single entity without any segregation or bifurcation of pharmaceutics or maybe the pathology or anatomy or anything what we generally see in a modern textbooks. Probably we have lost a good or easy way of tracking the science. But when you look at the fundamentals, this is having a meticulous observation. Our earlier papers very clearly said how complex issues are in an optimized form in the form of a shloka, and how practically it is demonstratable. Dr. Ravi Shankar already shown you, and this holds good even into the pharmaceutical science, but unfortunately this pharmaceutical science majority is in the hands of mediocres. This is a reality. Next one, please. Untapped opportunities in any drug development. Actually, these are the issues any pharmaceutical company or those physicians who are still in preparing, into the practice of preparing their own medicine must know while making a formulation. Polyvalent activity owing to aggregate or additive outcome of constituents. This is very important. That's the reason in one study in Trivandrum, not in medical college, Ayurveda Medical College, in a medical college of biochemistry department, they did an extensive study on the role of Virataradi Kashaya, deliberately removing certain ingredients like Shatavari, history of renal stones, and another group, by excluding the Shatavari, it's very clearly demonstrated over a period of in a cohort study that those who took the medication without Shatavari, there was a relapse. See, let us be pragmatic. We are dealing, let whatever our spirituality and the philosophy of Ayurveda, etc., coming back to the hardcore clinicians, we need to understand there is a science, a rationality, and applicability of these fundamental principles. The only matter is how much we dwell and understand the deeper sense of it is important. Sorry, you just go to the previous one, please. Previous one? No, you are going friend. Come back. The earlier shloka slide. Yeah. Plant possesses several chemotherapeutic equivalents. See, research, Ayurveda, usually many phytochemicals, phytoscientists or phytotherapists will keep approaching Ayurveda. But I'll tell you, already to a large extent, they have exhausted of those so-called research in that angle. But because they never believe in a polyvalent activity. They want an isolate, take the active molecule, synthesize at the end of the day, and create a drug. But in our science, this is what the beauty which we need to understand and put into practice. And desired result without any iatrogenic disorders is very, very important. Today, people are trying to come back to science not because of any of our individual efforts here. To a large extent, the iatrogenic effect of modern medicines forcing physicians or other patients to come back to the science. Though it was treated as a subsidiary or a second chance, now people are coming back as a first chance or maybe as a prime, medical science for their benefits. And most suitable for prolonged and long-term medication. Any polyherbal formulation or herbo-mineral population, if it is prepared legitimately and genuinely as per the classical references and the prescriptions, even in the management of chronic disorders. Ayurveda is looked at many chronic condition management, be it diabetes, be it obesity, be it asthma or any skin issues. So wherever long-term therapy is required, our formulations have a better role. And little scope for secondary drug effects and toxicity, provided industry doesn't make any serious compromises in the drug development. Next one, please. Next one. There's already said, please, the medical fraternity, don't look and compare your future of practice based on these two different entities. One is the reductionist theory, the other is contradictory to the same, and Ayurveda believes in a holistic way. And that's the variables of any treatment are innumerable. And that we have to keep in your mind before getting into the practice. Next one, please. And the real challenge is to understand the practice as per the classical tenets. And this is what the basic theme of this particular gathering of 3 days, where we stand. Whether classical medicines are the supreme or the proprietary medicines or the patent medicine, I will tell you, if you look at deeper sense, today serious compromises are made at every level, even at the level of preparing a classical medicines. But unfortunately, since there is already a shift in the practice, today every physician cannot sit into making their own medicines. And many ingredients are already either endangered or may be banned, but still the medicines are available. Look at, for example, a classical example, Ginsania Kuro. We have, it's almost banned, it's not available. But in the market, if you go and buy Trayantyadi Kashaya, extensively available from all major companies, then what is this? From where they got this Trayanti? This is what a physician has to look at before prescribing a medicine. We can't take an escape, or we cannot take a shelter in saying this is a different world, we cannot practice, we cannot prepare, we cannot prepare and practice and all that. At least the elementary knowledge with respect to the availability of raw materials. In fact, tomorrow Karnataka Biodiversity Board is conducting a seminar only to educate the industry and the practitioners which are all the things already banned or listed, or its utility may lead to some legal challenges or legal non-compliances from either the industry or the physician. This, why I'm telling is, there is always a notion that classical preparation are the best. But I will tell you, maximum compromises are happening in this particular class of medicines because of lack of available, genuine raw materials which are prescribed in the textbooks. Then demonstrate the speciality in the language world understands. Please make sure, however your dexterity, knowledge, or your capability of understanding the science or ability to recite the shlokas, unless the end user knows what you are capable or your science is capable of delivering to his health needs, probably we are all blinking in the dark. Nobody understands and nobody points at you. This I am telling with some harsh realities, we are seeing in North India, for example. There was a seminar conducted in Ahmedabad, comprising around 350 doctors. Many are postgraduates. This was an awareness program about quality into the practice and all that, under the Quality Council of India. And in between, I asked around 300, it's almost double the size of this auditorium. When I asked people to raise hands, those who are practicing only Ayurveda, I could get only 6 or 7. Where our national exclusive university of Ayurveda is there, where 50% of the seats are reserved for those state students. Almost hardcore trainers are there in the state, but somewhere number of practitioners are not there. If you look at the reason, I don't think that any lack of ability on the part of the physicians. It's also because the public, the end user, may not know what is your capability, what you can contribute, or he or she doesn't know what you can really help in their health needs. And most of the situation, you go to Delhi, how many Ayurveda practitioners are there? And but still there are a good number of institutes running and graduating, and people are coming out as PGs, PhDs. Why I'm telling is, there's another challenge which we need to address, which we need to ethically put into our own practice, how to educate your end user, that is your patient or the public, with respect to the deliverability of your science. In hard reality about yourself. Okay, but make sure all these things have to be done within the ethical ambit. And another important is supply chain management, especially with respect to the raw materials. Today, you know, Katuki is an integral part of many formulations. Just a year back, it was running at around 300 to 600 rupees per kilo. Just 2 months back, it was 3,500 per kilo. Now you tell me, an industry still runs with the same price, same formulation, same ratio, and that's what the claim is. But in reality, because there is no parameter except maybe HPTLC and other fingerprintings, we cannot clearly isolate the proportion of individual ingredients the way it's done in any synthetic medicine development. Probably that's a curse in our field, and that is under the shelter of this particular drawback. Many industries are compromising, and now it is the responsibility of the physician, before he gives the treatment to or uses such medicines to his patients, where exactly we stand with respect to the expectation of the result. Next one, please. And coming back to the challenges, to a large extent in a place or in a city like Bangalore or any other metro, the people don't have time to come and admit. The people don't have time to really spend a couple of hours or more to undergo therapies, unless it's a very serious, chronic and crippling condition. And we can't expect similar conditions to every physician to come across. So the best chance, or rather best challenge, this is one of the challenges actually, the industry or the physician to look at is how we can potentiate our medicines. And this is the one area, both the physicians, especially at the research level, and then comes the industry at the development level, at the formulation level or the drug development level, how we have to take that into consideration seriously, because the posology is very important. The compliance, any research activity, you all know in MD thesis, one of the important criteria you look at is the drug compliance. How the drug compliance is looked at, why it's negative, how it has to be improved upon. Because we can't tell patients that this is my kashaya you have to take, this is my gruta I have to take. Like, what are the benefits or other alterations we can make without compromising with the fundamental tenets what Charaka has given, or fundamental ethos what Ayurveda has rather bestowed to the community. So there, I strongly recommend some of the principles advocated in our classics like Avartana. It may be for a kashaya, it may be for any sneha kalpanas, or it applies to every other formulation or every other dosage form, how that can be taken in, how that can be adopted. And here, I've given an example of gruta. And you know, grutas, kashayas are having its own variabilities with respect to the application. One gives the pure and aqueous extract into the biological system, and the grutas will go with both aqueous as well the lipid solubilites. Apart from that, if kshira is used, the protein solubilites into the final component. And this will play a significant role depending on the severity. That's why many of the sneha kalpanas, if it is administered either for shodhana or shamana, it will have its own long-term positive effect compared to any other simple shamanoshadhas. Like this, many inherent principles are available, the techniques are available, and even yukti is one of the tools for drug development as per Charaka's definitions. So this yukti, without deviating or compromising, if it is applied judiciously, probably many of the dosage forms can be varied, and the compliance, which is a big negative in places like city, can be improved, and also the dosage can be reduced. And at the end of the day, the outcome, clinical outcome can be enhanced. Because all the physicians who get into the practice may not be in a position to have a full-fledged hospital with panchakarma and other facilities. So only with the Shamanoshadha, there are physicians who are practicing. See, like this, the industry also have to look at, and the physician also demand industry, how those principles can be put into practice in the drug development, which plays a very important role in our practice. Again, I'll repeat, however the history we claim about, however the beauty of our science we talk about, however the shloka we recite about, end of the day, if you are not able to embrace your science as a practitioner for your livelihood, I will tell you, we are all a bunch of jokers. Whether we agree or not, however unpalatable it is, but it is a reality. Because we study not 1 or 2 years like a diploma. We study for 5.5 years. Then we go as a mainstream 3-year post-graduation. Another, if somebody want to pursue another 3 to 5 years of PhD, then where we end up finally? So probably keeping that in mind, please revisit the formulation, because Aushadha is a very important tool. And this tool somewhere, though we are highly capable of understanding, our community in no way dirt their ability to understand and interpret. But probably because of lack of appropriate medicines at our disposal, many of our practitioners are little hesitant or shifted, or rather drifted. Please, next one. So, the great demand for quality medicines and therapy across the globe. Because of my NABH program, I keep traveling across the country to visit many hospitals, be it Maharishi or Kottakkal or maybe in many centers in Kerala. And many foreigners, when we interact with them, why they come here, we always tend to feel that they come for some sukha therapy, sukha chikitsa. But reality is different. I have seen in Maharishi Hospital, there are patients coming from very remote areas purely for a classical Ayurvedic management. More so, many hospitals in Germany, they are doing such type of thing. It's not because of any ancestry or maybe the history of the science. It's purely because of the safety and the other inherent positive profiles of the science. And safe and effective management of chronic and lifestyle disorders, another area. See, any physician before getting into the practice, any upcoming, those doctors or those graduates who want to get into the practice, please understand what is your domain competency before getting into the jumping into the practice and establishing your center. Where and what you can play a role, which are all the areas, what are the limitations in those areas. As first paper, Dr. Mangalgi very clearly said, sadhya sadhyatas. It is applicable even in our practice. What is the role we can play and which are all the areas, and handpick those areas, make little effort, sincere effort to relook into the textbooks, and many senior physicians, as Dr. Ravi Shankar said, Guru without role of Guru, it's impossible. However, your knowledge and document and other issues are. Look at the seniors or the teachers who are practicing, what we can really learn from them, what are the course corrections we can make. We need not cut and paste the whole phenomena, what really we can improve upon, which are all the areas we can, based on your own requirements, can adopt. Then get into the practice. I will tell you, there is absolutely no need to look back. This is what I have seen, this is what I have promulgating, and this is what we are observing in many people, upcoming doctors, and they are doing fantastic. And another important thing, don't compare yourself with respect to whatever the monetary benefits overnight to jump with your counterparts. Okay? That's another important issue we always lack, or rather we are too aspirant to get into that mode. Have patience, establish your own circle in an ethical way, in an unshakable way, then you see what is the progress. Otherwise, any n number of seminars, get-togethers, presentations, absolutely all will go to drain. If anything has to be positively happened because of this type of gatherings and seminars, end of the day, what really matters is how many people, how many students especially, getting really inspired to get into that line of thinking, in turn, finally getting into the practice mode. Okay? Next one, please. The take-home message, true Ayurvedic medicines, safety is inbuilt. But again, it's not that hard and fast rule that all medicines are safe. Please change that mindset. Earlier we had, there is no expiry period for Ayurveda medicines. Now it's all demolished, except Sandhana Kalpanas and Rasoshadas. Fits into the definition of drug completely. Probably no other medicine. You look at any modern pharmacology, today the drug is developed, 5 years is going to be banned. Many of the pharmacology textbooks in modern, it talks about initially only with the drug, side effect, complication, legal consequences, etc. Excellent for the management of chronic ailments. Which are all the chronic ailments can legitimately play a role? Please enlist and get into that. R&D should focus within the definition of an acharyas. Why I am telling is, many people are making all concocted medications. Take the, for example, Garjara Sattva, Kinchata Sattva, taking glucosamine sulfate or beta-carotene, mixing into your drug, finally giving the licensing authority this type of references, finally a synthetic molecule is coming into your practice, is not really the R&D what should happen, but it is unfortunately happening. Address the raw material issue, scarcity urgently, this is a different thing, not at your domain. And explore the true benefits of Rasoshadis. Deliberately I have not taken here. It's a wonderful science, but in the hands of charlatans. If you are preparing, there is no dearth, because that's a beautiful domain and plays a very significant role in our medical practice. Next one, please. So with this, I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to be here and share my thoughts about what exactly the industry and how we can look into the possibility of future practice. Thank you.